Good morning. Laoshi Lawrence McElroy here with another live session for our friends who attend our currently suspended program at Sachem Public Library in Holbrook, New York on Long Island. So today, we're going to do a little meditation, which you should all be doing anyway, even though we're not having class, but we'll take you through our Qigong-based meditation, standing or sitting, and then spend a little time focusing on ways to maintain or cultivate flexibility in the wrists. And we'll talk about warnings with both of those things. So without further ado, our meditation is Qigong-based or energy work-based. Now, as we always say in our classes, a standing meditation can take whatever might not be 100% with you and turn up the volume. So what that means is, if things aren't quite right with you, if you didn't sleep well last night, or, your blood sugar is a little bit off, or, your 3 martini breakfast is not setting well with you, you should probably sit down. Relieves some of the extra strain on the body. And if you're not sure if you need to sit, place the chair behind you as you stand. So if you start to feel a little woozy, all you have to do is drop your butt on the ground. Now notice, as I took the chair, I didn't bring my feet any closer together. The feet should be shoulder wide if you're standing or if you're seated. I'm going to turn the chair sideways. In the seated meditation, the side view, notice I'm not collapsing back into the chair. I have my upper body really as if I am standing. Hips are really still underneath the torso. Torso is still really underneath the shoulders. My chest is still sunk. My back is still rounded. And crown point of the head held to the heavens. Now for our seated meditation, though there are myriad choices for the hands, we offer 2. Palm down on tops of the thighs or knees, depending upon arm length and comfort. And you really want a chair without arms, because then that your elbows on the chair arms can raise the shoulders. Or cupped, one over the other, left over right or right over left, in the lap, palms up. I'm not trying to bring them into my body, palms into the body, they're up, just sitting in the lap. So that's the seated position. You can start there, you can end there, you cannot be there at all. Our basic standing meditation, I'm going to need that chair in a little bit, is our basic vertical alignment position, what we refer to as vertical alignment 101. The feet are shoulder wide, again, standing or seated. My knees are slightly open, right? Not the straight and strong leg of yoga, just not a straight leg. They are off lock. The perineum is anchored toward the earth. So the hips are underneath the torso is underneath the shoulders. The chest is sunk, the back is rounded, the chin from parallel, slight tuck down. In both the seated and the standing position, the tip of the tongue lightly touches the roof of the mouth. Now, in the standing position, you want to, although just like in the seated position, there are myriad choices for the hands. R1 in our public classes is over the acupuncture point for the Shia Dantian, the lower field of elixir. On the center line, the line that's marked from nose to navel, below the navel for most people, but somewhere between the solar plexus and the pubic bone, more or less where your elbow folds and that hand comes into contact with the center line, the center of the palm, that's where you want it, and the other over the top. Not interlocked, cupped, one over the top. Like palm up in the lap, it's our opinion that whichever hand feels like it belongs next to the body is for you the one that belongs there. And if it's different tomorrow than it is today, that is fine. So we settle into this position in our Qigong-based or energy work-based meditation, standing or seated. And our first focal point is the acupuncture point for the upper field of elixir, the Shung Dantian, the lower center of the forehead. We breathe, we relax, and we focus our mind on that acupuncture point. It's considered an esoteric acupuncture point, for it is part of no meridian. It's just there all by its lonesome. And the idea of focusing on that single acupuncture point for the Shangdantian, it's the purpose is to sort of draw a curtain between you and those things clamoring the loudest for your attention. And by the way, your eyes can be open or closed here. I always say that if standing or sitting still and kind of turning the inner eye toward yourself with your eyes open makes you feel wonky, then close them. And if doing so with the eyes closed makes you feel wonky, then open them. Focusing on that acupuncture point, drawing that curtain, creating that little separation between you and those things that most want your attention. When the separation is there, when you can feel that they're not quite as prominent and that stillness is a possibility, you may not reach stillness entirely, and that's fine. That's not the purpose of this pre-meditation instruction. The purpose here is to create that little neutral zone between you and them. Then the focus drops from the head to the belly, from the acupuncture point for the Shangdantian to the acupuncture point for the Xia Dantian, the lower field of elixir. That's the one that's on the surface of the abdominal cavity, more or less, if you're standing where your hands now reside on your belly. With the focus there, we have three main points for the meditation. 1, body. 2, breath, and breath has 3 parts of its own. And 3, mind. For the body, we want to relax, we want to settle into our physicality, releasing muscles and allowing structure and gravity to be the 2 things that hold us up more than our own muscles pressing down against the earth. A relaxed readiness, a dynamic relaxation, a surrendered resilience. What's known in the Chinese arts as being Song. From body to breath, and the first aspect of the breath is to deepen the breath, utilizing the diaphragm to carry the breath down deeper into the body cavity. The belly and the lower back should be expanding and compressing more than the chest and the upper back. And though I might say that I prefer a nasal breath, any combination, nasal or oral, is fine. And there can be patterns suggested as to when and what part of the breath the belly expands and the lower back, and at what point they compress. We're not going to concern ourselves with that now. Just breathe and have the breath be deep so the belly and the lower back is moving more than the chest and the upper back. Second aspect of the breath is it should be quiet. A relaxed breath is a quiet breath. And our breath here should be fine and quiet instead of coarse and loud. And the third aspect of the breath is actually what makes this Qigong-based, an energy work-based meditation. A sense, a feeling, an image, an expansion from the belly and the physical exhalation. Like a flower opening from the belly to the extremities on the exhale. And on the inhalation, the compression, the return to the belly, the petals close. One way to think about it is I'm not only breathing through my nose and or my mouth, but breathing through my entire body. And that takes us to the mind. And allowing the mind to settle, to calm, to quiet. We're not emptying our mind in the Western sense, pouring things out or suppressing them. What's meant when we say we need to empty our mind is empty of the desire, the intent to engage our thoughts. They can still rise. We become observers of our thoughts instead of participants with them. Just a few more breaths, allowing the consciousness to drift on the steady and easy rhythm of each inhalation and every exhalation. Now, if you're seated, there's no closing movement. If you're standing, there should be. We bring the consciousness back into the room, and if you're seated, that's the end of the meditation. If you're standing, the hands release from the belly, the left swings to the left, the right to the right. Identify your left foot. That's the one that's going to move. The right foot's going to stay grounded. As the hands float up, out, away from the body, your weight, your vertical alignment settles into your right foot. As your hands draw in, your left foot draws in, heel in the air. As you press down, the heel is pressed down, redividing the weight equally between the 2 feet, and a little rebound. Pulls the hands back to the belly. There you go, a little Qigong-based meditation. So our focus today through the rest of this little live session is going to be on wrist flexibility. If you know Water Tiger, you know McElroy Laushi likes to share a story about reading an essay one time about a player who said that he knew that he was not connecting with his form when he could feel his wrists. That means tension in the wrist. So we want to keep wrists flexible so we can do things in our form, so we can have a nice palm extension and things like brush, knee, step, and strike, and repulse the monkey. So maybe we can augment our Tai Chi with some physical training, doing things like push-ups. Push-ups can be tweaky on the wrists if your wrists aren't flexible. So there are a lot of different reasons to keep your wrists flexible. Martially, there's an entire, there are arts built around that idea of locking joints. Tense joints are easier to lock. Relaxed joints are harder to lock. There are lots of reasons to have flexible wrists. Now, warning, 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 danger, Will Robinson. If you have issues with your wrists, be very careful, or perhaps set out and just watch the rest of this live session. But be careful. Some of these are pretty intense. Some of them, many of you have done if you've been in a Water Tiger School program. Some of them, many of you will not have done. So we're going to start with a little shake out of the wrists. Notice I like to keep moving, so I'm shifting my weight back and forth. But you can do this stationary. But also notice I'm standing almost in my shoulder width position. That's really where that should be your default, right? That starts to train the body to really get yourself familiar with what shoulder width means. And remember, Water Tiger School shoulder width, drop of shoulder splits the heel in that side in half, and the same on the other side. So I'm going to move closer to the camera for these first stretches. So I'm going to get down on your guys' level a little bit. So the first stretches we normally do when we're doing a series of hand exercises from Shaolin Qin Na, but seize and control. So I'm going to throw one in that I don't usually do in the public classes. That's really pretty intense. So again, careful. The first stretch, we do one hand at a time, of course. Now notice, elbow to wrist is the same height from the floor. If I were to lower it all to the floor, of course you can't see that. But as I move to the bottom of the screen, pretty much all points of the forearm hit the bottom of the screen at the same time. The hand doesn't get there first. The elbow doesn't get there first. It all goes down together. The other hand, palm back, and I start to press that hand back toward the body a little, carefully, right? I don't want to muscle myself into the stretch. I can really put some pressure there, but if I do that, I'll drop my teacup later on this morning. So we're going to hold it for about 30 seconds. Didn't take my stopwatch off, so we'll estimate the first one, and then I'll grab the stopwatch as I start to introduce the second one. Breathing, relaxing and releasing. Just a few more seconds here. And that second stretch is sort of the opposite of that. What I'm going to do is drop that hand that was up like this. See, the forearm to wrist is still pretty much parallel to the bottom of your screen. The thumb of the opposite hand sits right in the wrist fold, right where the wrist and the hand meet. Now I reach across the back of the downward pointing hand, and I start to gently pull back and up. I don't think I started the stopwatch. Nope. There we go. So the thumb sort of acts as a little cushion for the wrist, so it's a little safety thing. Should actually eventually feel like the thumb's going to be in your way. Working to bring the pads of the fingers, the palm of the hand, up toward the bottom of the forearm for 30 seconds here. We're about 20 into it. Breathing. Now, the last one that we normally do in the public class is a wrist hold. So I'm holding the wrist however I want to isolate it. And then a rotation around. And I'm seeking 3 rotations, nice and slow, as big of a rotation as I can, depending upon, wrist issues, flexibility, that sort of thing. And my forearm is still parallel to the ground. There's my 3 in the first direction, I believe. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. Now, the one that I don't normally do in public classes is a twist. So there are different ways to start. The most intense way to start is starting with the fingertips up and the thumb toward you. You can also start with the fingertips forward and the thumb up. And what you do is reach around from underneath the back of that hand, grab a hold, and start to turn it. So this is the least intense version of this stretch. That twist, and you can see I'm right in alignment with my forearm. The more intense version, so you start with the fingertips up, twist, and drop your forearm into parallel with the ground so the thumb is forward. That's really, really intense. Some people will do that, and it's fine up here. Right? That relieves, again, that keeps it in structure with the forearm. I'll go back to the first position. Wasn't really watching the clock. That feels like about 30 seconds. And then shake that out. You got to shake that out. Same 4 stretches to the other side. So palm out, palm back. By the way, another clue here, another cue, is the higher I am into the pads of the fingers, the more pressure I put on the wrist. The closer I am palm to palm, so if I go down mid finger, it's a little bit less intense. Base of the fingers, a little bit less intense. Palm of the hand, least intense. There we go. A little dark down here. It's a little hard to see the numbers. Breathing. About 5 seconds left. And now, fingertips down, thumb, right in the wrist fold. See where the ink is? It's not in the palm of the hand. It's not in the tiger's mouth. It's right at the base of the wrist, at the base of the hand. Boom. 30 seconds. See if I nail this one. Yeah, okay. And you can play a little bit. You can do little turns of the pressing hand. You remove the thumb a little bit out of the joint, see how that feels. But be careful here. Almost to 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now hold the wrist, and again, you can hold it however you want to keep it stationary, and then rotate. Generally popping, maybe even a snap, considered perfectly normal. One more time. Grinding, no. If you feel grinding, back off the size of your circle, the intensity of your stretch, or simply step out of the stretch and enjoy the little break. There's 3 and 3. Now you got to shake that up. So the next stretches I usually do as floor stretches. Not everybody can get down on the floor, so there are some options here as well, which is why I have the chair in the background. Matter of fact, it's why I also have the stability ball, though there's a second reason that I have the stability ball. So if you have the chair, if you need the chair, if you can't get down on the ground, then you stand over the chair with your palms on the chair in the different positions I'm going to suggest. So like the first one, fingertips are going to be forward. The second one, I'm going to turn the fingertips out so my hands are like this on the surface of the chair. And the third one, very, very careful, fingertips are back. So we have three positions: fingertips forward on the chair, fingertips out on the chair, fingertips back. You can do the same thing on the stability ball. I can have my fingertips forward, boom. I can go side to side, boom. I can do fingertips back, pressing into the stability ball. So if you need to remain up, that's the way to do it. If you're down on the floor, like me, yeah, okay, I can still see my hands, right? Then you get the knees a little bit broader than the hips. Generally, you start with the hands right on the wrists, right underneath your shoulders. And then what you start to do for this first stretch is start to shift your weight forward. And that's the stretch. And it's just a static stretch, sort of hang out for a while. You might do little pulses. And if that's not enough stretch for you, you move the hands closer to your knees. If it's too much of a stretch, you move them farther away from you. So ideally, you're starting right underneath your shoulders. If that's too intense, you start out away from your shoulders. If it's not intense enough, you start with the hands closer to. You can do a little bit more. Boom. And release. And you just hold that for, somewhere 15, 20, 30, 45 seconds, probably tops. And then the next, I'm going to face you guys for this. Again, if you start here and the wrists are underneath the shoulders and this is pretty intense, then that's what you do. You do little swings from side to side. I'll just use the chair for a moment just so you can see what that looks like. Again, palms flat and swing side to side. Then to intensify, you start to move the wrists closer toward one another and still do the swing. Always judging, always being mindful of my range of motion and how my wrists feel, the tendons, the ligaments, the joints themselves. You want to keep the palms flat here. If you want to do a finger stretch, that's something different. You bring the palm of the hand up off the ground and you stretch into the fingers. But we're talking about wrist stretches here. Now, the third and the last is the most intense. And some of you may not be able to do this at all, and that's okay. You work on the other ways of stretching that you can do. You gain some ground, and then perhaps someday you can be here with the wrists under the shoulders and the fingertips back. If that's too intense, it's the reverse of the other. In other words, now, if it's too intense to be underneath my shoulders in this stretch with the fingertips back toward me, then I move the hands closer to my knees. And that lessens the intensity. If this isn't enough, that's like maybe 1% of you. And they move a little bit farther out. Regardless, what you want to start to be able to do is start to move the butt back toward the heels and feel that stretch. And like the other stretch, we're doing this for 15, 20, 30, 45 seconds, maybe a minute. It's just a static stretch or releasing a little bit, not pulsing. I think I used the word pulse before. You want to be careful of doing little bounces. You do a ballistic bounce in a stretch like this, and your tendons can shoot through your wrists. Breathing. Now, you want to Relax that a little bit, then palms up and do the same thing. Set back. Sort of a counter stretch, arms are straight. And then shake that out. You got to shake that out. So there you go. Some stretches some of you have done before, and some stretches most of you probably haven't. There is one more that we do in some of the public classes. It's called prayer hand stretch. So you just hit the heels of the palms together, the pads of the fingers together, and you go down, keeping the heels of the palms together. And hold it for a little bit, a couple of breaths, release, and then do like 3 rounds of that. If you want to intensify this, you start to press the fingers side to side. Obviously, I almost forgot that one because we already did the shakeout. And release. So see, this releases the pressure. This puts the pressure in the stretch. And again, shake that out. So floor stretches, if you can do the floor, chair, stability ball, whatever works. A note about stab ball. If you're also participating in my Tuesday morning live session that I do for the folks who attended the West Babylon Public Library program, and of course the general public, you'll need either a stab ball tomorrow, stability ball tomorrow, for a little warm-up to which I'm going to introduce you that involves doing movement while holding a stability ball. But don't worry, you don't have to like get on prime and get your stability ball to your house by 10:15 a.m. tomorrow. What I have here is a little hand towel. And if you hold that out at arm's length, at a good width, it does the same thing, more or less, that the stability ball does. It creates a little bit of weight, some arm activation, and we want that for tomorrow morning's warm-up. So if you have a stab ball, great, medium, large ball, or a hand towel for tomorrow's session of Water Tiger Live for West Babylon. So there you go. Some wrist stretches, working on our wrist flexibility. Why? Because it's good to be flexible, right? If you can bend, you need not break. Wash your hands. Stay at home. Flatten the curve. We hope to see all of you live in actual 3D, in living color, face to face, at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But we'll let the medical experts tell us when that is. So for now, Lashe Lawrence McElroy, signing off.